What's going on, Titans Nation? Welcome back into the Morning Glory Show. I hope your shit showered, shave. I hope you got your mayo in your cup because it's time to tighten up because training camp is back. I am joined by my co-host, as always, B-Will at BWillTFTV and at TFTV Sports, and Jonathan Miller at Esports Vale. And you can follow me on all socials at Glory Day Sports. And how are we doing today, boys?
Great, man. Training camp's underway, man. We've got a lot to talk about. It's going to be a great show.
Bro, football is back, man. Football is back. Once training camp day one hits, we are back in it. This Saturday, first open practice as well at Nissan Stadium. I'm going to take my little man. It'll be his first experience in person with the Titans. He's super excited. I'm super excited. Man, football's back.
Hell yeah. A couple of housekeeping notes. Make sure if you're checking us out for the first time, head over to YouTube, hit subscribe so you can enter that Tajay Spears signed jersey giveaway. We're giving that away as soon as we hit that 1,000 subscriber mark. We broke 800 yesterday, so we're on the way. In addition, we got our Glory Day Sports Fantasy Championship. You can find that link down below if you want to join. $20 buy-in, half point PPR. It's going to be fun on a bun, third year doing it. Hopping into it, though, we got lots of news to cover today. So much. I don't know if we'll be able to fit it all into an hour. Ryan Stonehouse returns early yesterday. Got him out there punting. We didn't know how that was going to play out early into the season. We thought he might be ready towards the end of training camp. It's great to see him out there day one. Harold Landry, Daniel Brunskill didn't make it out for day one. PK reported that was due to sickness, so they'll be back very soon. And then we got Colton Dowell added to PUP. We anticipated that with the late ACL injury last season. And then I'm not going to harp on it too much because I went full throttle on him last week, but MPF added to the active PUP. It's anticipated probably a couple more days before he comes out there with the knee scope.
Yeah.
For a cleanup. And
was it a knee or a shoulder cleanup? I think you said it was a knee cleanup, right?
Knee cleanup.
It was a knee. He dealt with the shoulder all last season.
That's right. And
got the knee done very recently. And I'm not going to harp on it, but my only thought on this is why are we doing this late into the offseason? Why wasn't this done?
I think it was done in the beginning of the offseason. It's just been lingering a little bit, and they want to get him where he needs to go be first. I think the timing of it was done in the beginning of offseason. It just has lingered a little bit.
Yeah, I think he's going to be back for padded practice, which correct me if I'm wrong, Jake. I don't know, or if either of you know, but I think padded practice starts on Saturday. Like they have a couple of days of just shorts and no pads. So I think MPF will probably be back for that. But yeah, bro, he's got to get out there. he's got to get out there. So hopefully no more delays.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, obviously this right side of the line, we've got to get fixed, and we've got players showing out against them. We'll get into it a little bit later. We got to get them healthy. Got to get them healthy so we can at least have a camp battle there. You got to be on the field to have the battle. That kind of leads us into our first topic, this offensive line. Lloyd Cushenberry, John Ojukwu, they're out there moving the twins, Olga and Bertha. They're showing out. And then J.C. Latham versus Arden Key. That may have been one of the premier matchups yesterday. Arden Key got the better of him a few times, but Latham came out after practice and just said, hey, we're getting back into it. We're still learning. And the dude just continues to impress me. He's a pro's pro already, even from day one of training camp. I'm super excited for this kid.
And with Key getting the best of Latham, that's Key's wheelhouse right there.
Yeah,
that's his game. That's premier. That's what makes him a professional football player is his ability to rush the passer, right? So he's going to get the better of Latham with that. Yeah, he's very, very, very quick.
That's one thing that Latham needs to improve on, right? Is like he's given up the inside several times because he's maybe forcing, trying to get to the outside fast. So I think that the Arden Key and Harold Landry matchups for him early on are going to help him sharpen that tool set a little bit.
So they did say that J.C. Latham had been working out with Trent Williams over the offseason. So you talk about talk about learning from the best. I mean, that's the GOAT left tackle, in my opinion. He's worked with him all offseason. And he alluded to that when he said, yeah, my training has really translated a lot. I'm seeing a lot of my training translate to practice and stuff. So that's something that's really, really good, man. That's somebody that I look towards emotionally as a leader, but also as a player that Latham should really look at and try and mold his game off of if possible. Because he's got the quickness, he's got the size, not the quickness that Trent Williams has, obviously, but he's got quickness and he's got the size that Trent had made him so great, man. If he can mold his game after him, we'll be in good shape.
Yeah, Callie.
Picture of him sitting next to Brad Hopkins after practice yesterday.
Yeah,
dwarfed the man,
dwarfing Brad Hopkins.
I retweeted. It looked like Derrick Henry standing next to Mark Ingram back at Alabama, just towering over the dude. So we know the genetics are there. It's just putting it between the ears and putting it on the field. But dude is a large man.
It was cool to see the difference, though. You know how everybody's like, this is a mountain of a man. You're like, sure, okay, we get it. But then when you see him like stacked up against another left tackle in the NFL, and you're like, wow, okay, this kid's huge. But I thought, to kind of go off of the offensive line topic a little bit on the right side, Kelly mentioned it a little bit in his opening presser too, that basically, of course, it's going to be an open competition on the right side. He was mainly talking about right tackle, but I think obviously you can lump right guard into that conversation as well. And he, very clearly said he gave us a Vrabel answer in some regard, but he actually elaborated, which I really appreciated. And he basically said, like, look, we're not going to know who the starter is until probably going into week 1 or post preseason or whatever. And so, but everyone's going to get a shot. They want this to be an open competition where everybody gets a chance. And if somebody starts to peel away and is doing really well, then they're going to get more reps. But they're going to leave this competition open on the right side all throughout training camp, throughout the preseason games. And that's good news for us because this is going to, obviously this is a young offensive line. They're going to have to mold together, and they're obviously going to want to try to find who's going to win at that spot as early as possible. But I think Stoney had I think it was Stoney. It might have been somebody else, but I was watching a couple of different folks yesterday, and I think it was Stoney mentioned that there's like a play style difference between like an NPF versus like a John Ojukwu or, somebody who would be plugged in at right tackle, where it's like NPF is kind of your zone scheme, like light on his feet, agile right tackle versus like a John Ojukwu, a Jaron Christian, I think is his last name. Some of the guys that's been brought in by Bill, who are more of your like maulers, anchor droppers that are going to be a little bit more physical in the run game. John Ojukwu kind of shows those traits as well. So it'll be interesting to see stylistically how the right side matches up to the left side now that we know that the left side of the line is solidified.
Right. And how exhausting was it before when Vrabel would come in and you talk like I could see him now with Latham saying, well, he's got to earn the spot. He's got to earn the job. It's not given. Callahan doesn't play all those games. He's left tackle. They said at draft night. We're not playing all those games. On the right side, though, I think Ojoku's his stock has really, really, really risen, man. I mean, that's somebody that you can sort of pencil in for a preseason game, week 1 starter.
Man, he's been there, bro. He's been available.
Yeah. He was out there through OTAs, and it was reported that he was the first one out there yesterday. We'll see how that all progresses. Obviously, we want to talk about Jalen Harrell, who was showing out yesterday, and it was reported he was doing so against the first team. So how I read into that is we know Arden Key and Latham were matching up. I see that as John Ojukwu and Jalen Harrell were matching up for us. So I know obviously they're probably rotating that first team, so it's not confirmed. But if that's the case, that it tends to even think this is still a competition. But from there, do we think Shadeed Charles is penciled in there at right guard as of right now?
I don't think anybody's penciled, right? Like I think it's going to be a revolving door on the right side. But the good news is, guys, here's the good news. The good news is we had 2 players and 3 players if you include, John Ojukwu, which he got hurt and he couldn't really like show what he potentially could be because he got hurt pretty quick. But if you include Ojukwu, we had 3 players going into this year from the roster last year that we thought were, 4 because you have to include Brunskill. Sorry. So Ojukwu, Brunskill, the other 2 are NPF and Dylan Radens. So those 4 guys that were imported over from last year's roster that you would assume could be a serviceable right side of the line, no matter who those 4 are, assuming that Brunskill and maybe Radens were the 2 guys. And you can throw Jalen Duncan if you want to as well. But a couple of guys who we thought would be serviceable. Then you insert Bill Callahan. Then all of a sudden he starts signing his guys, bringing in some players that played pretty okay for him. And so now all of a sudden going into camp, we're looking at like 7 players. If you include Shadiq Charles, you got Jaron Watson or Christian, I might mess this up, and then the other guy Watson.
Leroy Watson.
So
Leroy Jenkins.
You have all of these guys.
What a name, Leroy.
Who have come in, and now all of a sudden we're looking at like 7 to 8 guys that are going to be competing for the right side. So that's the good news. We were not in that position last year. It was an entire offensive line from left to right that was like, oh God, we have to piece this together. Like you had Aaron Brewer, who was for sure going to be there, and then you had Peter Skoronski, rookie, who you're for sure getting plugged in either at left tackle or left guard. But still, those other 3 positions had to be figured out. And so the good news is we've isolated the right side of the line, and there is a ton of talent that are far better than serviceable in some regards. And so what assortment of those 2 positions is going to be interesting, because I think out of the 8 guys, I think there is legitimately 4 or 5 of them that could really add value in those 2 spots.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you said. It's just, he brought his guys in, and we've got our guys that still were on a roster. I mean, I want to say that Radens, he should be somewhere up there competing. I haven't heard anything about him.
Yeah.
I don't think that he's in favor. That's just from what I'm seeing. He doesn't look like he's in favor with the new staff and the new regime, and I'm not sure why, because he's proven to be a hard worker, I want to say. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe they're just not impressed with him.
We might have to wait until the end of camp, right? We might have to get through camp, get through the preseason games to really see who because right now, again, to my point, like there's 8 guys, in my opinion, that are far serviceable. And if you include, was it Rupsich? Like maybe he's in at right guard also. Like there's 9 or 10 guys
are serviceable though. I don't even think they're half of them worth being on the team.
Well, Rupsich had he graded really high in the run game in the couple of snaps that he got last year. So I think that, anyways, my point is that there could be any pair of those 8 or 9 guys that could be good, and I think we're going to see all of them in some capacity rotating in and out until someone shows that they're just the guy. And so that's maybe the next question. And Jake, I'm going to let you cut in because I know you had something to say there. But what I'm interested in also out of those 8 or 9 guys is that, who do you guys think are probably going to be the winning pair is kind of what I'm curious. But I think we might not be able to answer that because there's so many variables until the end of camp.
Yeah. I think they've brought in 15 offensive linemen. That is currently what is on the roster. We know they're cutting about half of those guys. How I see this interior offensive line, I think it's all but rote and pin. I think it is Shadiq Charles. I think Bill Callahan loves this kid. He personally brought him in, has worked with him in the past. He fits the mold. I don't think Dylan Radens is that guy. I think it's been all this talk ever since he was drafted in the 2nd round. He just doesn't have it. And that's fine. I think he's a serviceable backup. I think he will potentially be competing for that backup spot at the position with Daniel Brunskill. I think both of those guys are great talents, and if they have to fill in a pinch, I think that's a good problem to have. But Shadiq Charles, he offers the power there. He has the movement skills. Daniel Brunskill just doesn't have the athleticism for this scheme, I think. And then Dylan Radens, I just don't think he has enough ass in his pants to hold up there in pass pro. On the right side at right tackle, though, that one is I have no idea what's going to happen there. I think it's John Ojukwu. But I'm not putting any stock into that. NPF could come out in 2 days and reassume that starting position. I could see Jalen Duncan pushing for it. I mean, athletically, he has all the talent in the world, but between the years and putting the work and the all this into his play, that's what needs to be seen. And that was his biggest draft profile coming out last year. Is he might not be a good and a hard worker. So we'll see how it all plays out. But I'm super excited for this offensive line. I think it's going to be middle of the pack, even starting the season. week 1.
Who do you guys? I'll let you guys both go first. Jake, we can start with you. Who do you guys have slated? Your day 2, because we're going into day 2 of training camp. Who is your day 2 prediction for starting right guard and right tackle going into the season, going into week 1?
So it's John Ojukwu and Shadik Charles for me.
Interesting.
I'd agree as well. Man, it's MPF. If MPF gets on the field, he could overtake, Ojukwu. But I'm not going to put a penny on it, MPF being healthy or being on the field. So, I think it'll be him. Radens, I don't know what the hell is going on with him. It's always something. Radens, I don't know what the hell is going on with him. Like I said, I don't think he's in favor with the staff. I'm not sure why that is. I mean, he looked good on the tail end of last season. He's got the tools, just like we talk about the tools with Duncan. Radens has the tools. It's just a matter of doing. And I'm not sure if he's doing in practice or what they're not seeing. But he could be a good candidate for right guard. He could be a decent candidate at right tackle, but they see him as a right guard. So,
yeah, I think it's NPF jobs. It's NPF's job to lose. And there's a good chance that he loses the job.
I mean, hell, that's lost.
Not starting off well.
I mean, we'll see. Like I said, I think this is kind of an impossible prediction because there's so many variables here, and there's a good chance that a certain player that we might have slated at at tackle would probably be really good inside, or maybe vice versa. But I think there's a good chance that Shadik Charles is probably going to be the starter at right guard. I think that makes sense. I think it'll probably be a battle between him and Radens. I like Radens a lot. He had a pretty good game against TJ Watt last year at right tackle, but then he turned around and had an awful game in Tampa. So it's like he's a revolving door. He's like, his highs are really high, like starter level quality, and his lows are absolutely low. Like, put him on the roster. So like, just there's so much variance in his game that it makes it kind of hard to be like, yeah, he should be the guy when you have maybe some better consistent players or just as good, but they're more consistent. So I think that I'm kind of with you guys. I think if I have to pick somebody at right guard, Shadik Charles probably makes the most sense. And then at tackle, it's really tough because John Ojukwu, I'm not sure. We just haven't quite seen enough like game time from him. So I'm kind of curious to see what happens there. And then of course, like some of the guys that Bill brought in have a real shot too. I like Jalen Duncan. I think it's probably NPF's job. Barring any like major injury or setback, I think it's probably NPF's job. But
I can see that. I can see that. What about? Are y'all excited about the left side? How the left side is going to form? I mean, Skoronski looks good, man.
Man,
yes,
super excited.
He's throwing on some weight. I mean, golly,
man. If JC Latham is 80% of the player that he's projecting to be just by the eye test, then we are going to be in a much, much better position. Like, it's funny. Like, I was watching someone break down, could have been the Music City Audible. I forget which show it was, but someone was breaking down. I think it was the Justins. But they were breaking down basically the difference from Bill Callahan, not having Callahan on whatever team he was on prior, and then the year he comes on, the difference from where the offensive line went from the previous year to the year that Callahan joined. And on every team, I think he did, Dallas, Washington, and then Cleveland, where every team was like in the bottom 20s. And then here, insert Bill Callahan, and then they jump into like the top 10, top 12. So every team had done that up until this point. And it's like, okay, the Titans are kind of in the same spot, bottom 3 offensive line, like, where can they jump up to? So I think that's an interesting concept too, because it seems like adding some serious talent, adding some serious, depth as well, which is exciting because it felt like this team had zero depth over the past couple of years. Yeah. So, we can sit here and talk about how excited we are for the starting 5, but I'm arguably just as excited as what the depth could look like. Like, if I'm Brian Callahan, Bill Callahan, Rand Carthon, even the front office, Miss Amy, anybody who's seen what this team was over the past couple of years, looking at them going, okay, who do we have to cut? Oh, okay, well, Brunskill's going to be a backup. Radens is going to be a backup. You're like, cool. Okay, that's pretty damn good depth. I'll take it.
Decent, for sure.
And we have to remember.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we have to remember Latham's still switching from the right side to the left side. This is first practice of training camp. He's not learning the position, but he's getting used to going back to that side. And when we talk about Arden Key getting the better of him sometimes yesterday, I think that's going to get less and less as we progress on. And that's the player he's going to deal with, or not, he's going to struggle with going into the league. What I'm worried about more than anything is going up against a guy like a Will Anderson over there in Houston. And this is a guy that he performed very well against at Alabama's practices, being those speed to power guys. Arden Key is just the speed guy. He's light in his pants. I think overall, I mean, this is a guy that gave up 1 sack last year at Alabama. Mm-hmm. It's going to be improved. And the Peter Skoronski, we know he dealt with the appendectomy last season. He's still putting that weight on. This left side is going to look damn good. And then going back to your take on bringing in Bill Callahan, that first year he comes in, it goes from that 32nd team to upper 14. It's that year 2. The year 2 is when they take that even bigger leap and jump into that top 5. So we're putting the pieces in place right now. And I don't think any of us are expecting a Super Bowl in Nashville this season, but next year, there's going to be some predictions out there. We could get into contendership based on this year with Bill Callahan and Brian Callahan. So
it's based on Levis.
Exactly. Who looked really good yesterday.
Who didn't have support and who has support now. So
you can tell in the way that Brian Callahan speaks in the press conferences, the level of detail that he speaks with when it comes to quarterback play. This guy knows what the hell he's talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Tim Kelly going there talking about, he said, well, we got to stick to our principles. Come on, man. What principles? This guy, Callahan, comes in, he's explicit in the press conference about what he expects from his quarterback. It's not a secret. You know, I want you to get the ball out on time, but I want you to place it where you need to, not just on the guy, but maybe to the side he's turning or away from an incoming defender. He's putting this on Will Levis's plate, and Will Levis is the type of quarterback that can take an information overload. You know, that's the positive with him in itself. The guy he's a bright kid. It ain't like we got, you know, Mr. 12 S2 score over there down in Houston. You know, we got a bright quarterback here that can take on this information and can apply it. We're gonna see if he can apply it. You know, I think he can. We'll see.
No, that's the word I would probably use for Will Levis to describe him, is hyper coachable. And Brian Callahan is putting the details to that. I mean, how many times have we heard from Will Levis this offseason talking about his base setup, his arm angle setup, and listened to Coach Mack speak yesterday. He had that great pass to NWI as he's trailing out of bounds, and they posted it on socials and everything yesterday. I'm sure everybody saw that.
Wide receiver 1.
And that's another thing. We got to see some stuff today. But NWI, he's a fine receiver. He's a great depth piece. I don't think anybody's arguing that. But Coach Mack came out and said, hey, last year, that would have been a fucking piss missile. That would have been coming out at Mach 10. Yesterday, he layered it over to NWI, who made the great catch. And we heard him have another great throw to Calvin Ridley yesterday that I think ultimately got dropped from here in the notes. But the kid started out 4 for 4 and 7 on 7, and then went into T period and started 3 for 4. That's 7 of 8. I mean, what we're talking about, his next step is becoming consistent, getting that completion percentage up. And just based on day 1, I think that's a great starting point. And he's going to have those bad days. We know that. It's going to, and he said that. Him and Callahan have come out and said, hey, we're going to put the ball in some sticky situations at time just to see what we can do. But it's learning to pull that from Sunday. And I think just hearing the kid talk, he's super intelligent. And
he's a freaking nutcase, man. The level of detail he is.
I become more of a believer every day listening to him.
Yeah, he talks the talk for sure. You know, it's just a matter of, you know, the application of it, and which we're starting to see so far. So, but he has it in between the 2 ears to get it done. It's just about how he handles it in game, how his temperament is in game. You know, if he's able to just harness that, go get it in game, because that's what it's going to boil down to. We've got as Callahan said, he's got the mechanics. He can put the ball absolutely anywhere he wants to. He's an accurate thrower. It's just about doing it in game. You know what I mean? So it's all about his temperament here. And you dropped that note about Ridley. I can't help but laugh because That's what we've been hearing all off season from the
Jack's
ops in Florida.
From the ops. Yeah, I think like Will Levis, to me, what I've seen at this point, like obviously I felt like the eye test from his rookie year was enough for me. I was sold on what his trajectory could be, but I was worried about what the development process would look like for him, because let's be honest, like Charles London was cool. We liked Charles London, but outside of Charles London, there was a lot of doubt in what this kid's development could be, and not just his development, but also the development of the team, like the support. He was one of the most pressured quarterbacks last season. Not just that, but he also had one of the highest failure rates at receiver in terms of like miscommunication or just dropping the ball. So he had a lot of things, like looking at the statistics, like you can see that there were a lot of things playing against him in addition to being a rookie quarterback. So if you take all of those factors fairly and evaluate his play and what he did in his rookie year, the consensus thought was like, looked pretty good. Not too bad, right? He did a lot of things really well. Did a lot of things that he needs help, needs to improve on, but overall did pretty good. So I'm really optimistic about where he goes from here. Like to what you guys said, just him developing through the offseason, taking his skill position guys to Cabo and working, getting back from Cabo, going on a 1-week vacation with his family, and then getting right back to work at Vanderbilt. And, somebody said it on Twitter that I noticed too. And it's something that I noticed, is that this is probably the most organized this roster, this team has been in the offseason that we've ever. Yeah, it was Herndon. So easily the most organized this team has ever been in the offseason. And that alludes to, so like you look at his physical traits. You're like, cool, he checks the box. One of the best arms in the league, at least from what we can see. Does a lot of things really well, moves really well in the pocket. Just kind of needs to figure it out, like the game, right? Needs to figure out like the processing side, where he needs to go with the football, decision making from time to time, right? Had a lot of turnover potential throws.
Dude, with the processing, I think he's got everything up until he hikes the ball. Like,
yeah.
If you see him pre-snap, he's excellent assigning, doing offensive line, deciding on who goes where. I'm drawing a blank right here.
Well, you got to think too, like he, not just just to kind of give him a little bit of credit, again, looking at the stats, like he was one of the most pressured quarterbacks in the league when he was playing last year. So naturally, not only are you saying, okay, pre-snap, I have an idea of where I'm going with this ball. Well, if the defense is showing you anything different and that changes, now you have under 3 seconds in many throws to figure out where you need to go with the ball now that the defense has changed post-snap. So naturally, you're working at a rookie quarterback's pace, which is, a fire hose. It's significantly quicker than what he had to do in college. Right. And then on top of that, you have your not the best receiving core. So naturally, like, of course, there's going to be decisions that he wished he'd have back. Like that's going to happen throughout his career, even when he is far more advanced, right? Like Joe Burrow talked about it in his press conference yesterday. He's like, I think I'm a pretty good player, but I still have to improve. Like there's still things that I can do better. And that'll be the case for the rest of his career.
They say Joe Burrow is going to be walking out to the real Slim Shady in Cincinnati week 1. That's what they say. Yeah,
he looks like it. He definitely fits the mold.
Aura lost. No. But I think Calvin Ridley had a good spot yesterday too. He came out and said,
"Yeah,
I mean, I see Matty Ice out there." He's talking about Matt Ryan, who was another cerebral-based quarterback.
Hey. You know what he said about Treylon Burks the last couple weeks too? He called him T.O., didn't he?
He did. He did.
Let's pump the brakes.
Physically looking a little
Ridley,
like
we know. No.
Will Levis has shown something, so I'll
Ridley,
slightly more stock into it.
We got to watchRidley now.
Yeah, biggest hype man in the game.
I'll pull you up a
standing in the
picture right
boombox
now.
in the back going, yeah.
I'll pull you up a picture right now of Treylon Burks that looks like T.O.
It ain't his stats.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Not yet. He does look slimmer. I will say that.
It's a good segue into the receivers, though. I mean, Hop looked good. It's good to see Hop out there healthy. It's good to see Ridley out there healthy. It's good to see Boyd out there healthy. It's good to see Burks and Phillips out there healthy. I mean, this is the healthiest receiving core that we've seen. Knock on wood. Start training camp in a while.
We've ever seen, I think, in my opinion,
so
just based on the last decade.
that can't be no coincidence. You know what I mean? I mean, we got guys out here running around, flying around. We don't have notes this morning so far yet of guys being injured like we might have last year or the year before. So, it's interesting to see, and I'm excited for this receiving core. I think we still lack a little bit in the yak department, and that'll bite us a little bit in the when it comes to the season. But we've got some guys in there, man. We got a lot of talent. Between Ridley and Hopkins, 1A, 1B. I'm not going to say either one is the one, but it's not going to be easy for defenses to just sit on us and stop us with those two. I mean, you're going to have to. I know it sounds cliche, but pick your poison.
Well, I think it goes down to even more so on this medical staff and how they've talked about. They took the vertical route tree out yesterday, and they're going to progress through the season. They're bringing that in. We don't want any soft tissue hamstring injuries. They talked about, hey, if you hit your miles mark for that day, we'll pull you out. And that would have gave this old coaching staff an aneurysm if I'm pulling Kyle Phillips out after he's ran 30 routes. I mean, this is a completely different staff. And I think that's going to keep us healthier. And we've talked about it in the past. We know this medical staff that was with the previous regime was basically non-existent. We're bringing the analytical side to not only the players, the coaches, the recruiting, but also into everything else encompassing this team. It's not your father's football team no more. So I think that's big. But going to the receivers, I liked what I saw yesterday. I don't know who is the one. I think that will play out very early into the season. If I had to lean as of right now, though, I think it's Nuke. I think DeAndre Hopkins is the one on this team. He just has the rapport, and we'll see how it all progresses.
He's the type of receiver you can force the ball to, though. Ridley's not the type of guy you can force the ball to.
That's a good point.
I don't think. When I see a receiver that you feed, Hop's been fed for decades, 10 years. You feed him. He's that type of receiver. He's sort of, I'm not going to say more reliable, but you can feed Hopkins. I wouldn't Ridley, I don't know.
That kind of brings me to the next note. As we know, DeAndre, he's never been this hyper athlete, even coming out of the draft. His RAS score is absolutely abysmal. But as he progresses with this age, you don't really have to worry about him losing that step. He never had it. So shout out to football and other F words. They were talking about this yesterday. We didn't plan on talking about this. But DeAndre Hopkins, we know the contract situation is coming up very soon. And Rand Carthon talked about how they're targeting potentially extending these multiple players. DeAndre's got to be on the short list. As of right now, would you guys be okay with an extension before the season?
I'd be okay with an extension before the season under the impression that he would move inside. Right. I don't want him outside next season. I want him moved inside to be able to start working on that. And for the twilight of his career, maybe the next 2 or 3 years, that could be our slot receiver. Right. And I think we'd win a lot with him as a slot receiver. I mean, that's a good slot receiver to have. He's crafty enough. He's on the bigger side, and he's going to be moved around where he's not going to get pressed as much as he would outside. That's also why I wanted a guy like Odunze or, Neighbors if available at 7, just so we can ease that transition. So, I would love to re-sign him just under the impression that he moves inside, honestly.
Man, it's going to pain me to say this, but I would say no. And it sucks because I love D-Hop. You
just love Treylon more. I mean,
I was about to say.
No. My reasoning is that I think, just from the financials, kind of looking at what this team has to do over the next year or two. Obviously, you have, 3 more years if you include this year of a rookie contract. You don't have the luxury of the 5th-year option with Will Levis. And I don't think D-Hop would be cheap necessarily. So I guess my answer is contingent on what the contract would look like. Like if it was just an additional year for a respectable amount of money, maybe it's under 10 million, then I'm down. Absolutely extend him. I'm in. But if it's significant money, like the contract he's playing on right now, where you're looking at north of 15 million a year, then I have some concerns as far as what the team is going to look like. So I would probably prefer maybe a mid-season or end of season extension in that scenario where you kind of have a better idea of projected free agents. You have a better idea of what your team did, because I'm just going to say it. What if Treylon, has a season that's respectable, and beyond respectable, he just kind of has a coming out party? Then what? Right? Then you're like, you feel really good about the other two guys. Like maybe it's like, we really like Tyler Boyd. Maybe he comes back. So I don't know. I feel like we have to kind of see what we have and see. I mean, obviously we know D-Hop is a stud, and if he wants to return, it would be really, really hard not to bring that guy back, because he's really shaped into a leader, even through a coaching regime change where he could have just been like, peace, see you guys. He didn't. He really embraced the city. He embraced the team. He's been an awesome leader. He's been involved in all the voluntary activities. He's been available. I mean, he checks all the boxes. So it'd be really hard for me to sit here and say he shouldn't be re-signed, but I think the money matters, and I would just prefer for it to not be before the season starts, just so we can see what we have.
I think you ain't getting no more $10 dime bags in receivers no more. Odell signed for 15 last year, and he's garbage. So I mean, he's garbage. So you got receivers getting paid $30 million now. So the ceiling of receiver pay is going to go up. I'm fine with him getting that 15 again, or maybe a little less, but it's got to be incentive based, just like this contract is now. I mean, he didn't really get the bulk of that cheese until he performed and got over 1,000 yards and such, certain amount of catches. So as long as it's incentive based, I could give a shit, because we got a rookie quarterback on a rookie deal that doesn't keep us out of the quote unquote Higgins sweepstakes in the offseason. So you talk about a receiving core next year that I'd be very satisfied with. T. Higgins, DeAndre Hopkins in the slot, and Ridley at the Z. You can't go wrong with that. And you talk about smash mouth. You got Higgins, a big dude on the outside. You got Ridley and Hopkins, and then we'd have a tight end by then. They ain't gonna be who we got. Maybe Wiley, but I mean, you talk about an offense that's really taking shape at that point with Pollard and Spears in the backfield. That's a good offense there. And if Levis takes the next step, that's where you can start having conversations. And we didn't even look at the defensive side of the ball. That's when you can start having those conversations. But you're not going to have those conversations with Tyler Boyd or Treylon Burks in the slot. You're just not. Hopkins really elevates the floor of that receiving room mentally and, talent-wise. It's his mentorship in there is not to go unstated either.
Honestly, Buell, I think you might be leaning into the role assignment a little heavy. I honestly think this year even we're going to see a lot of flexibility with those guys in those roles. Like obviously you'll probably like the X is the one role I'm a little concerned about on the offense, but I think you're going to see some rotation. Like I don't think we're going to see Tyler Boyd specifically at the F. I think he might kind of play around in the Z maybe. I don't think you're going to see Calvin Ridley specifically at the Z. Right? I think you're going to see him kind of like move around. So and DeAndre is going to play all those roles, by the way. So like to your point, like yes, he would be really great in that slot role, but I think that we're going to see some of that this year. They're going to move these pieces around, and that's why I think there's a decent chance that we see enough flashes from Treylon. I'm not saying you don't sign D-Hop. That's not the argument I'm saying. I'm just saying, like as an isolated point here, that I think that there's a decent chance that we see some flashes from Treylon, because he's going to get opportunities at the X. Because he's the one true receiver on this roster right now that has the potential to play the X in a big way. Because we've seen him do it. It's just been really inconsistent. What do you mean? We've seen him stretch the field and make these massive catches over the top of defenders.
I've seen him drop them too.
He's dropped some. That is very true. All I'm saying is that he can play that role. And if he's going to be any value added to the team, I think it's going to be in that role, not exclusively, but largely. So
I just think the expectations of us, we've got to raise our expectations as fans. Treylon Burks is below those expectations.
No doubt.
No matter what he does this year, because he's not going to do what we expect of him. He's not going to do what's expected of a starting caliber X-level receiver in his league. He's not. And I'm not gonna put no stock in Treylon Burks. I also don't think Tyler Boyd, the only time his feet are going to get outside the numbers is when he's running on and off the field. I think he's going to be exclusively in the slot. He's never done that in his career. You're not going to do that this part of your career when you've lost a little bit of a step. I think he says we're going to move guys around, but I think Ridley and Hopkins move around. Westbrook or Keenan, he's always moved around. But guys like Boyd, no, he's pigeonholed in the slot, I think.
Maybe not Boyd. You're right. Boyd will probably be like 90% in the slot. But my point is that I think that we're going to see wide receiver sets that we have not seen in Tennessee, and we are going to see rotation of those skill players that we are not used to seeing. So 100%. That's what I'm saying. Like
Pollard to be
our
in the
evaluation. Slot. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
You know how many wheel routes Pollard and Tajay Spears are going to run this year? All I'm saying is that we are probably going to see – we are used to evaluating receivers in the context at which they have been played in the offensive schemes that we've watched over the years, right, as fans. So it's really difficult for us to be like, look, wide receiver 4, Treylon, he's torched. He's cooked. We'll put it, he's done. It's easy to say that because that's how receiver talent has been evaluated this entire time for many, many years. The difference that I think now is that I think that we are going to see a healthy rotation of mostly the entire receiver room. And I think that Treylon uniquely fits a role that there's a glaring need at in this offense, which is at the X. That's all I'm saying. So whether he does it or not remains to be seen. Like who knows?
Think we need at X?
Yeah.
I think we need a vertical threat at X.
Yeah. Hop is the guy that's going to go and set the line of scrimmage every down.
I mean, yeah, he's going to go. He'll do really well in like those 10 to 15 yard digs and like route tree combinations that he does really well. But throwing him a go ball at this point in his career, all I'm saying is that
you're doing that to the other side of the field.
With Ridley. Yeah, I get it. All I'm saying is I think that there's some opportunity that Treylon can fit into. And who knows? Who knows is all I'm saying. Who knows? I don't know. And I'm not just saying that for me. I'm sorry. I'm not just saying that for others. I'm saying that for me. Who knows? Because I think that we're going to see a different enough offense that we are not used to evaluating in Tennessee, and it's going to make things interesting. So that's why I'm so optimistic, because the sky really is the limit in terms of a passing offense. And right now, evaluating all the skill position talent is really difficult because we're going to see a very different offense. So
I just think you could put Treylon Burks in the greatest show on turf, Rams, Mike Martz. I think you could put him on the Mike, I don't even know, Mr. Walsh in San Francisco, the West Coast offense. I think you could put him in Andy Reid's Kansas City offense. He don't have the dog in him. It's just not going to work. It's not about the scheme. It's about him. It's a Treylon Burks problem. And he's transformed his body good year 4. Where was this at? 1, 2, 3. Come on. He just ain't got the dog in him. We're going to see.
Hey, man. Year 4.
Being a new father could change things. Maybe that's going to put the dog in him. Maybe
Rand Carthon did say they had a conversation this offseason with Bill Callahan, and he said in that RKW interview yesterday morning, he said that they had a conversation with Treylon, and he seems to have taken it very seriously. And then boom, you see the results of
the last chance.
I just want to ask y'all a question. I just want to ask y'all a question. Who else does the team always have to talk about? We have these conversations with. We've talked. We've got it. He's in the right mind frame now. What other player on the team are we talking? Do we even say this about?
I mean, I think we just talked about one with Dylan Radins a little bit.
He don't get these conversations. Yeah, I'm saying the conversations.
Not the extent of Burks. No.
Yeah, I'm talking about the conversations that we gotta go into the media. The team executives in the team have to go and say, man, he's working with veterans this offseason. He's doing really well. Something's changed. He's changed his diet. Who else are we saying this about?
Well,
why do we have to say this about him?
He's a first-round pick that hasn't owned up to it, right? So it's like naturally, yes, 100%. No, I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah,
I'm just saying I'm leaning towards optimism. That's all.
I think you could throw him back in college and he wouldn't do nothing.
Oh,
he just, he ain't got that dog in him, man.
One of us is going to be very wrong this season. I'm excited.
I hope it's me. Yeah. I hope it's me, because that means we got a decent wide receiver 4. I hope it's me.
Oh, man.
We'll see. Let's talk defense, man. Let's talk defense. We ain't talk nothing. We ain't said nothing about defense. Snead is full participant in practice.
Looked good too.
Snead's looked good. There. Jamal Adams playing up there on the line. Only safety I saw mentioned yesterday.
Yes.
And then he talks about potentially bringing in his buddy in Quandre Diggs, who says, I mean, he talks to him every day. Talks to him every day. Rank Carthon mentioned it yesterday on the radio that they're probably going to bring in another safety. Sounds like the communication is there. And I think we've gone from Simmons watch to Diggs watch in the matter of 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it should be very exciting. And then just going into we talked a lot of offensive line. We go to defensive line now. We talked a little bit about Jalen Harrell. These rookies were showing out yesterday. We got Jalen Harrell out there causing fumbles, causing multiple pressures. And then we got T'Vondre Sweat, which is the big name that, I mean, we've talked Sweat for months now at this point because he's turning into Treylon Burks right now. He is going to be talked about every week. Every week.
Okay.
And hopefully he's slimming up.
Bro,
he's done.
I love it.
Simmons is done with it too.
Yeah.
He's taking it personal, which is what you want to see. He's putting in the work. He's out there. He's full participant yesterday. He's moving through drills, and he's moving through them smoothly for his size.
Looks good. He looks
real good.
And
I'm excited
the conditioning looks fine from all accounts. We didn't have any videos panned to him where he was like this. We had a receiver where that happened, Treylon Burks, but we're not talking about offense.
I don't know. DeAndre Hopkins was talking some shit yesterday to that defensive line.
Yeah, but we're not talking about offense no more. Hold on.
No.
I just had to throw that jab at Treylon Burks, but he looks like he's in shape, man, and he's over it. You know, this is the big media. This is the big town media games that these players and pressures they got to feel. You know, it's about accountability, and he's the team is going to hold him accountable. Looks like the media is holding him accountable, and he's pissed off about it. And that's where I want him to be. I want him to be mad as shit.
Yeah,
I want him to feel like he's got something to prove every game. You got a 360-pound man that's mad, that's got to feel like he's got to prove something. That's a recipe for success in this defensive line. Him and Big Jeff both pissed off. That's going to be good to see.
Yeah. I think he's got a chance to make a real impact on this team, and I think that. Honestly, you want that. I mean, this is best case scenario for the fans. This is best case scenario for the coaches, right? This is the best case scenario for his teammates. This is best case scenario for him to be doubted when he is that good of a player. It's ridiculous.
Thank you, PK.
Honestly, it's ridiculous. But yeah. Whoever is fueling this fire, thank you so much, because
keep doing it.
This guy is going to be a game wrecker. Like, he has game wrecker potential. And so when you have these two guys side by side, Simmons and Sweat, you have the ability to absolutely collapse the middle of that offensive line. Everything opens up. Everything. It makes the backers better. It makes your edge rushers better. It makes your secondary better. And by the way, iron sharpens iron in this case. We're not just looking at a strong defensive line that makes a secondary better, which is what the Tennessee Titans defenses have been over the past several years, with the exception of my man Catch No Balls. Like, that was a pretty good secondary in terms of coverage, but that's been lacking since that AFC Championship run. Well, guess what? It's back now, arguably better than it was before. Like, there is really strong coverage skills in this secondary. That's, guess what, going to complement the defensive line and not just needing the defensive line to complement it. So T'Vondre Sweat is the starter. If he's as good as we need him to be, then this entire defense lifts into a stratosphere here. If Big Jeff stays healthy and T'Vondre is the player that we hope he is, then everything changes for this defensive line. Everything changes for the defense. And this is a much better defense that's being talked about. Like, this has top 5 potential. Like, I don't think the national media really understands how good this defense can be.
Potentially, for sure, it's there. Their ceiling is that. I mean, that's their ceiling for sure. And we couldn't really say that last year. We couldn't really say that the year before, but they're there, man. That secondary is different. With Snead leading the secondary, I'm worried about the safety position, but like you said, we'll be bringing in some help and reinforcements there. That defensive line, man, outside of, once we get past edge 1 and 2, it's still, the starters, what we're going to roll out there, decent.
No doubt.
I think Sweat is the force multiplier on this team.
Yeah.
He statistically,
that's a good way to put it.
He's not going to have 10 plus sacks. He's probably going to have 2 or 3. But if he is doing what we need him to do, Big Jeff is going to be dominant.
15.
Harold Landry,
12 and a half.
He's going to be in double digits, I think. He's talking disrespect too.
He had double digit year before last?
Yeah, I think he had 10.
I think so.
10.
I think it was 10 exact.
And that's with Tart next to him, right? So Sweat is much more of a game wrecker than Tart. I could see 15 on Simmons' radar. I mean, I know he's got that penciled into his locker. You got to double those guys. Yeah, he's got. I bet you he's got 15 penciled into his locker. That's a number in his head. I guarantee it.
I can definitely see it.
The edge, man, I can't. The edge can't be understated. Like Harold Landry might be the biggest benefactor of this T'Vondre Sweat draft pick because, like to your guys' point, you have both of those guys on the inside. You have to allocate 3 players for those 2 guys. Period. You cannot solo block either of those players or they're ripping through. So when you have that type of pressure in the interior, it changes how the offense has to play against you because it's different. If you have a dominant outside guy, then I can bring in a tight end to help chip you. I can bring in, we can pull a guard. There's like a million things that you can do to add pressure to a really good edge player. But when you have a dominant interior, God forbid, 2 dominant interior players, then it changes the way the offense has to operate, right? So in this instance, like Harold Landry, Arden Key, whoever the entire rollout of, exterior outside pass rushers, these guys are going to get a ton of one-on-one opportunities. And so that's where, like, really what it boils down to, like the dichotomy of the defensive line here is like, okay, because they're going to go, okay, your 2 best players are inside. We're going to triple block these guys. And we're going to make your outside defenders who we think are maybe lesser talented, we're going to make them win the one-on-ones. And so can they do it? That's basically going to be the dichotomy of the defensive line for the entire season, really. And so that's kind of where, as good as those interior guys are, what happens with the outside guys.
Yeah, most definitely.
I think it's about making simulated pressures more than anything. That makes offenses have to keep an additional blocker in there. It could be a tight end or a running back, etc. Having those 2 in the interior are going to allow Kenneth Murray to come free, allow Jamal Adams to sneak up on the line and come off that blitzing off the edge. Yep. It's going to allow, like you said, Harold Landry and Jalen Harrell and all Arden Key and these guys to get home. It's going to cause confusion and chaos in the backfield for the quarterback, which is going to allow maybe the greatest secondary we've ever seen based on these corners to do what they need to do. And Jeffrey Simmons talked about it yesterday in the press room. If they do their job, it's going to help me. If I do my job, it's going to help them. This defense, you said top 5. It's a real possibility. We've got a hellscape as far as offenses will be going against this year. But come season end, the Titans are going to be talked about a lot more highly than they are going into the season. I do expect that.
And remember the conversation we had? Remember the conversation we had earlier about who they're going to be the leaders of this team? We know the leaders on that defense. I mean, we see it. Simmons is the guy. Snead's the guy. I mean, that's set in stone. The offense on the other side of the ball, I mean, it looks like it's going to be Hop and, Cushionberry, I guess.
It'll be
Levis.
Yep.
So
Levis.
It's sort of taking form. That's another good thing to see in training camp is to see who these guys gravitate to and see who they follow. That's going to be important. I wonder if we get the C's on the jerseys again this year.
I hope so.
I think we will. I'm going to say this. Do not let this team get up on you early because this defense is going to be talking all the shit in the world. You got Big Jeff out there talking. Sweat is a talker, known for that. Arden Key is the biggest talker out there. The dude,
Denard might say something to you on the sideline. You get too close.
Denard's gonna be wearing those black Air Forces. He's gonna be talking and stuff. And then Snead, this team is gonna be talking. They're gonna get in your head, and they're gonna come from different positions. And just like Chef Rand says in the comments, those blitz packages are gonna be crazy. They're gonna be coming from everywhere. There's going to be some big
the Titans fan base by week 5 to have a moniker for this defense that we can actually stick by. Not the
tickle monsters,
tickle monsters,
not the tickle monster shit. Let's get a real one that can be marketable, that we can put on T-shirts. Something that can actually put a name to a face for this Titans defense and really get them on the map, man. That's what we need.
If you're in the comments, predict the name.
Another thing I forgot to mention is that they can move Big Jeff as well. He doesn't have to stay in the interior. So if like some of those like blocking packages end up being kind of what I mentioned, then you just slide Big Jeff outside. Then what? Now all of a sudden that kind of has to change a little bit, and that pressure that you get from the inside combined with Big Jeff coming from lining up on the outside, So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity here. The one thing that I think we have to kind of take a look at is like, what is this defense going to look like on the backside, right? Because for the past several years, it's been a secondary that is, if you can even call it bending and not breaking, I would say getting 30 points hung on you is breaking. And that's what happened a lot. The secondary gave up a ton of points in coverage. So that's the one thing that I'm excited for. Every Titans game that we watched mostly over the past couple of years, you're like, okay, corners are, we're playing some weird off coverage zone, cover 2 bubble thing. It's like, okay, cool. Let's see how this, okay, there's a 11-yard pass. There's a 7-yard pass. It was just easy to pick us apart. Like Justin Herbert, threw for 400 something, I think, in the game, the Chargers game. And it was effortless. It was like these little 5-yard comeback routes, just boom, 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 just picked us apart. And you won't see that against this defense, I don't think. So that's the part that I'm really excited about. But before we close things out, Jake, I definitely want to touch on the safety situation, like the Rand Carthon and Jamal Adams kind of hinted at what might happen.
Definitely. I think we're looking at bringing in another guy. It's probably going to be Quandre. The money's in the bank. They have the cash to make that expenditure. And bringing in a guy like Quandre is the polar opposite of a Jamal. He's going to be able to play that deep third for you. Something this team might not have outside of insert name here. I'm not going to bring his name up on this pod. Amani Hooker, who Rand Carthon also talked about. And just kind of
great player.
He talked about him being able to play multiple positions. He can cover the tight end. He can play in the box. He can even jump down and play that dime backer for you. And then he can also cover the deep third. But he's the only one that can do that. You don't want Molden back there doing that. You damn sure don't want Jamal doing that. But Quandre allows you to have some more versatility there. Yeah. So giving that versatility on the back end, I think that's where these turnovers are going to come from, is from the safety position, because they're playing a lot of press man. I mean, I think they're going to be great at doing that, but I don't know if the Oskies are going to come from that. Quandre, I think, is a great fit for this team. I think it's a no doubt, no brainer for me.
Yeah, I wouldn't be mad about Quandre Diggs. We just have to get an addition there in that safety room. We have to. It's not good enough where it is, and with an addition in the safety room, that'll allow us to have a little more versatility. I guess I don't know about how much versatility Quandre will give us. He'll have to be pitch and holding into that center field role. I damn sure don't want Molden or Hooker there. Molden either, really. But it's just going to be interesting to see. We've got to have an addition, and it's something all three of us agreed on that last week, that we have to have another addition, even with Jamal Adams. It's not enough, and we've got the money there, so it's a matter of Simmons or Diggs, one of the two. I'm indifferent to who we grab, because at the end of the day, it's a July safety signing. You can't really put too much stock into it at all, but it'll depend. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm interested to see kind of like schematically where they choose to use Jamal. Like, is he a 3-down safety? Is he just a guy that comes in at certain sub packages where he, moves into the box, moves into a nickel role? Like, I think those are some of the obvious, notes, but I'm also interested to see, like, how do they feel about him playing a full-time role? Like, it kind of seems like the hints. So to fill that in, I know we didn't touch on the hints, but for anybody who missed that, essentially what happened yesterday at the start of camp is that Rand Carthon was on Ramon, Kayla, and Will, and he was asked basically, like, do you need to add another safety? And he essentially said yes, like we're going to add to the room at some point or whatever, something along those lines. And then after practice, Jamal Adams had his presser, and he basically alluded to talking to Quandre Diggs a bunch, and he said something along the lines of, I don't want to pressure him. Like, I know he's got his process. He needs to kind of figure out what's right for him, but I would love to have him as a teammate again, essentially. So basically, you read between the tea leaves here, and you can pick up, like, okay, the Titans are in talks with Quandre Diggs, trying to find out, like, is there a deal that makes sense? And obviously, is there a role that makes sense? Because they have to talk to, like, that's the first conversation that happens between the player and the front office / coaching staff is, okay, how are you going to use me? And they didn't say, nobody has come out and said, this is how Jamal Adams is going to get used. But clearly they've spoken about it. So yeah. Brian Callahan, Denard Wilson knows exactly how Jamal is going to be used. And so since we're still picking up that a safety signing could, Quandre Diggs could potentially be that guy, then what that tells me is that Jamal Adams is probably not going to be used as a 3-down safety. He's probably going to be used in those packages that utilize his skill set and allow him to kind of go sideline to sideline. But also, maybe we see like a 3 safety set where it's like he comes in as like the will backer or something like that.
Clarkin alluded to as much in the Ramon, Kayla, and Will thing. Said he can operate as a big nickel. He can operate as a dime backer. So he looks like he's going to be a sub safety, which is fine.
Yeah. So I'm totally fine with that.
Who Molden was going to be.
Yeah, right. And obviously with like kind of the weird linebacker situation that the Titans have, like there's certainly I don't want to say void. Void is too big of a word, but there's some operating opportunity within the middle of the defense there and at nickel that, bring in Adams and having him play maybe more snaps than just 1 or 2 here and there makes sense. So yeah, at this point, I'm okay if they don't make a signing. I'm okay if they do make the signing. I'm fine with adding talent. And Quandre Diggs was a very, very good player. Like we're talking Pro Bowl talent player. But obviously the way things kind of shaped out this past season for Seattle wasn't great. But yeah, I'm in.
I'll go on a limb. I'll go on a limb and say Quandre Diggs for the Titans is red hot right now. Yeah. I guarantee it. Yeah. I think it's red hot right now. I think it can happen imminently. If the way they're talking about, they really don't talk about much like that. Adams, I mean, they don't really talk about players externally like that, right? And acknowledge that. But I could see Adams. He brings that up. Carthon coincidentally says, "Yeah, we're looking to add safeties." I think that's unlike us. You know what I mean?
Well, it's even going back to the Adams signing. We didn't even know they were in communications with Adams until he was basically on the OTP podcast.
Right. Literally signed and it was directly on that podcast.
Yeah. So we'll see how
he was trying to get into the front door like the Jets video and
like yesterday.
Yep. And
he got locked out yesterday too.
Yeah. I think that's by design. People just lock Jamal Adams out of places where he's supposed to
be. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think as we head into day 2, and we'll kind of wrap up with this, who is somebody on the team that you're just wanting to see a little bit more from that you didn't see anything from day 1? It could be Hooker, it could be Molden, etc. You guys, have anybody that just jumps to your mind?
And I know we ain't got the pads on. yet, but I want to see a little more out of. And this is not to say they didn't do anything yesterday. It's just something I want to see a little bit more of. Is Pollard and Spears. I want to see what they're doing out there. Just media wise, see how we're deputizing them. If we're doing any 11 on 11, are we running a lot of split back? Are we running Spears in the backfield or Pollard in the slot? What are we doing with those running backs? That's what I want to see. Sort of give us a glimpse into what to expect out of Callahan. So that's really what I want to see day 2. Hopefully they can give us a little bit of that.
I want to see where the snap share is on the linebacker side. On the middle linebacker side, I'm curious, like who's getting most snap share. I'm sure it's Gibbons at this point, but alongside of him, who is it? It's Kenneth Murray. It's what type of snaps are the young rookie Cedric Gray getting? Like I'm going to keep a close eye on that because I think much like the right side of the offensive line, I think the linebacker situation is kind of fluid as well. Like there's opportunity for someone or someones to emerge. Like I'm not convinced at the start of free agency, we were convinced, or at least I was convinced that Kenneth Murray was going to be a primary starter in this defense. And that's because he was like one of the main guys. But now I'm not convinced that that's necessarily the case. Like Gibbons is kind of risen up a little bit. I think Cedric Gray is going to rise up, or maybe the fact that he's a rookie, they kind of limit his snaps. Who knows? So I'm interested to see what happens with that middle linebacker room.
I had Gibbons on my list as well. I'll say this. I didn't see anything written about Gibbons yesterday. And I could be wrong here. I believe it was A to Z. They reported players that generated pressures yesterday. They had the defensive line players, but in addition to that, they had Jamal Adams, Kenneth Murray, and Cedric Gray. So they're getting reps out there, and Jack Gibbons is getting talked up a lot, and I think he is a good, safe inside linebacker. But come season's end, I think it's Cedric Gray and Kenneth Murray out there as the primary two.
That's who I'd like to see.
I think that's what most people want to see. Jack Gimsey gets a lot of hate just because he's an undrafted free agent. He gets the NWI treatment. He's never going to be.
He gets hate because he can't get to the sideline and stop.
It's because Trevor Lawrence.
Good.
It's because he's not athletic.
Trevor Lawrence outran him for a first down to the sideline, and I was like, nope, I'm done. I'm out.
Yeah. And I
want to know who's wearing that green dot too, man. That's a big deal. We talked about it all offseason. Who's wearing the green dot?
That's I could give a shit less who wears the green dot.
Who's wearing the green dot?
It's probably Amani.
I predicted, and I've said this way in the past, and then I kind of retracted it. I think it's going to be Kenneth Murray. I really do. I think week 1, Kenneth Murray wears the green dot, and I have not heard anybody else say that anywhere.
I think
Simmons wears it.
Kenneth.
You think Simmons wears it? It might be Justin.
I'm not saying which Simmons. Might be Justin.
Simmons.
Oh, okay. Oh, maybe. Who knows?
The only other one I had on my list were receivers not named Nick Westbrook-Akine. I want to see something for Burks. I want to see DeAndre. I want to see Tyler Boyd. I want to see these other guys. Jaquan Jackson. I want to see these guys out here. I want to see how they progress and get that cohesion.
Odds that Phillips gets cut.
High.
I put it at 60.
Mr. Jonathan, Mr. Optimist, no way.
Yeah.
It depends on how many they keep. If they
keep
6, he's gone.
Optimist Miller, no way.
7.
I think they're probably going to keep 7 receivers, which is again very un-Titan like. But I think that Kyle is probably going to get ousted by Jaquan Jackson.
That's good for the Titans.
Yeah, I mean, good problems to have.
We'll see, but I think you have to have 2 receivers, probably 2 receivers, or maybe a receiver and a defensive back that are able, or a receiver and a running back that are able to return kicks. And I just don't think that. I mean, I love Kyle Phillips. I do. I'm a big fan of him coming out, 6th round pick, all day long, right? Or 5th round, whatever it was, all day long. But he's kind of stacked up against in a wide receiver room that's really competitive now. That's the difference. The past 3 years, absolutely, he was a candidate to make the team, and he was. But at this point, Mike, you're talking about 4 receivers in Treylon Burks, the starting 3 plus Treylon Burks. Then you have Nick Westbrook-Akine, which is going to be in there. So that's 5 guys already that are shoo-ins. Then you assume they keep 7, so you have 2 spots. Then you have Jaquan Jackson, you have Kyle Phillips, you have Mason Kinsey.
Jackson, Mason Kinsey.
Yep. And then I feel like I'm missing another big one. Or maybe they just keep 6 and it's Jaquan.
Here's the thing.
And they take that spot somewhere else.
If we have an injury, if Tyler Boyd goes down, Kearis Jackson maybe moves into the slot. Maybe Nick Westbrook-Akine goes there. Maybe D-Hop goes there. Kyle Phillips is 5th all the way around from the slot. Not even X and Y or X and Z considered. He's not coming into the game.
On second thought, he probably gets the nod over Kearis Jackson.
Or not Kearis Jackson. I'm talking about the
Jaquan.
Yeah, I'm talking about Jaquan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, not Kearis. But I'd take Kearis over Phillips. I'll be honest. He can return kicks. He does more. That's more than Phillips brings to the table.
Kearis was good in punt return.
He was in the short, limited time that we saw him. I just don't think – I think it's similar to Kyle Phillips. I just don't think their bodies are made to live in the NFL. We're going to see injuries, and maybe it's one of those guys that's interchangeable and the other one's on the practice squad. I can definitely see that. But Kearis offers more to the team based on his special teams ability. And we don't know who's returning kicks. We don't know who's out there on punt return. And it might even be a guy like Eric Garrett.
Yeah. I can tell you, the meme that you're safe, pal. If Phillips gets on that practice squad, he's not getting claimed. You're safe, pal. You can buy a house in Nashville, buddy. He ain't going nowhere.
Yeah, on second thought, it's probably 6 receivers. It's probably 6, and Jaquan is the 6th.
I can see it.
We'll see. I could see him keeping 7, and we'll see. I mean, Mason Kinsey got claimed. I think Kyle Phillips is a little bit better than Mason Kinsey. Maybe.
Not a good lock. I don't know. We'll see. We got to think. We got our goal line red zone receiver on the roster, so that's why we probably keep 6 because our 7th is Jeffrey Simmons at the goal line.
It's facts.
Tavondre Sweat's gonna be pushing for that tight end spot,
and Sweat's pushing for the tight end spot as well. I bet you who catches a touchdown first, him or Simmons?
I Do
I
we
think
see
Simmons
a
is
package
still
with
higher on
both
the
of
pecking
them on
order.
the field?
I think
No,
if
that
you
would
see
be
Simmons,
nice.
I think if you see Simmons trot out and he's not in like the backfield, then they're like, okay, the ball's going here. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Fullback dive, Jeffrey Simmons.
We've only been putting
Let
it
him
on
pound
tape
it.
for 3 years of him trotting out there in the goal line for him not to get a pass thrown to him. It's coming.
Any day now. Well, I think that wraps it about up, guys. We're way over at this point at the hour 10 mark. We appreciate everybody in the comments. Shout out to Chef Rand, Ben Parrish, Sobro, Stony Keeley, and MB. MB did have a question. What other Titan shows do you guys like, watch, listen to? Specifically, do us a favor, head over to 440 Sports, Broadway Sports Media. Shout out to Easton Freeze, friend of the pod, has celebrated his newborn, I believe yesterday, day before yesterday. Dada's now officially a Dada. You mentioned the Justins earlier, the Music City Audible podcast. Great listen to OTP.
Titan Coliseum podcast. I do well.
Coliseum, great show. Jonathan was on just a couple months ago. Great guys over there. We love all of them. You guys are so blessed to have so many other Titans creators out there. They're literally popping up every week, and we've got some great guys out there. Shout out to the unofficial Titans podcast with Stoney in the comments as well. But
so with that being said, you can find anything you want in the Titans, content creator space. If you want some reactionary stuff, you can go to the guys from Jersey. I forget their name.
Yeah, don't forget about Sal.
Yeah. So if you want the reactionary stuff, you can go there. If you want the analytical stuff, you got F Words Pods, you got Stony Keeley. I provide a little bit of that myself. Jake does as well. Jonathan does as well. There's so many different avenues you can go if you want Titans content. It's just about what you want, man.
I like both. I like getting both.
Yeah.
That's why I like watching the Jersey boys, because I'm like, sometimes after a loss or something, I'm emotional, man. I don't want to talk the logic, and I go there and I just like get my emotions out. I'm like, yes, all this.
Yeah.
And then
I do that with the interviews outside the stadium on game days too. So you get a lot of that with the ones I do.
Those are classic. I'm excited for those to return this season too.
Yeah, shout out to Titan Upload and the Titans Rossi out there. Mr. Titan, he's got his event coming out here very soon. Haven't checked that out before. But and Sononi says in the comment, we need a big group film room collab at some point. We'll make it happen. We'll make it happen when we're down in Hawaii, like we were talking about a couple shows back. But we will see you guys next week after we get some more training camp. Yeah. But we love you guys.
Better than Burks.
Hey, he put in the sand. I saw him out there in the sand this week.
I'm sorry.
But we'll see y'all next week. We appreciate y'all. Mean it. Love you. Bye.